I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular scheduled February school committee meeting here in the Abington Middle High School Library. It's Tuesday, February 25th. If anybody could please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. First, I'd like to see, is anybody who would like to address the committee? If they would, just please come to the podium and state your name and address for the records. Okay, thank you. First up, reading and approval of our minutes from our January 28, 2025 meeting. As soon as the committee is ready, I'll be looking for a motion and a second to approve or modify anything on them. I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Report of the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Basta. First up is going to be the English Department update by Dr. Elizabeth Gonzalez, the Department Head for English in the middle high school.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. It's always a pleasure to come and tell you about the state of the department. So, our presentation has a certain rhythm to it every year. We'd like to tell you about our strengths. And I believe our strengths, 7 through 12, are in our experienced, skilled teachers, some of whom have spent most of their career here at Abington High School working with students at these grade levels. We have an authentic text-set curriculum written by teachers, and therefore they are deeply invested. They're not giving you a commercial product. They're giving you a product based on literature that they have selected and assessments that they have refined over time. They teach for mastery at all levels, not a bell curve. We believe in vertical planning and content and skills and meet from grades 7 through 12 on a regular basis for all our department professional development. We have a consistent pedagogy. We believe in common essential questions and assignments at grade level. And our common essential question is, what does this text tell us about human experience? What does it tell me about myself and others in the world? We believe in student voice and choice and demonstration of knowledge and skills so that everybody has an opportunity to share their point of view and to be able to play to their strengths. We focus on writing as a process and as a practice that improves over time, and our students do have a considerable amount of writing workshop time in school. The challenges and areas for student growth are constant, not just to Abington, but to everybody who teaches secondary school everywhere. We want to invite students beyond minimal compliance, punching their ticket, getting the D for diploma, so to speak. We want to engage our passive students. We'd like to evoke inferential reading comprehension skills. Those, statistically, are the challenges that students face in standardized testing and in questions that they get from their teachers. What does this say beyond the literal? What's between the lines? We'd like students to generate ample supporting evidence to support a thesis, eliciting attention to craft and style as well as content. How does the author craft their work? Because they can take that advice as a role model for their own writing. And we are challenged also by supporting our English language learners. It is so hard to be a teenager and to be a newcomer, because this is part in the student's public school career where they are usually coming into their own as independent learners. And if you know teenagers, you know the last thing they want to be is dependent. We are growing readers and writers in challenging times by using a variety of strategies. We engage students through goal setting and feedback for individual writing assignments. What do you want to achieve here? And the first thing that we always do when we introduce a new work is to share our objectives with students. We support our multilingual students in a number of ways, from having books available through the immersive reader that can be translated, and also audio that can be translated for them. We had a special success with this and All Souls this year. We introduce audiobooks, graphic novels, manga, and ebooks as real reading, and we feature film, documentaries, and multimedia as texts to be read that require special skills of their own. One of the things that is perhaps our most important goal is to increase student stamina so they can work independently as readers and writers. And this stamina has three parts in terms of text complexity. Can they read a work that is qualitatively complex, that has various levels of meaning, that it has language that sometimes defies conventionality and clarity, the demands of particular genre and knowledge in the structure of the text. Quantitative complexities in word length or frequency, sentence length, and text cohesion. So it can be just more text as well as different text. And finally, reader motivation, knowledge, and experiences, task, purpose, complexity, and questions posed bring the reader and task to another point of complexity. And we always want to turn the notch up, turn the dial up a notch, so that students are reading successively more complex work. If they're reading work that is not complex, then they're challenged to see it as complex, especially in terms of craft. And we also believe in the Bloom's taxonomy of higher thinking skills. And it has been revised since I first started using it for that top create level, where students combine parts to make a new whole. So after they read Romeo and Juliet, I think one year I brought to you the choice board, where students could choose a variety of assignments, but they could also choose to be a creative artist by using Romeo and Juliet as a springboard. I think I've brought to you before, too, poetry that students have written after seeing videos about kids with special needs. So for a student to create something also is a sign of sophisticated understanding. They are not just receptive, they, too, are creative. One of the things that when I talked with Dr. Basta about coming to visit with you tonight was a desire to know how are we serving our students and preparing them to be college ready. And I wanted to talk to you about the difference between college English courses and high school English courses and how individual stamina is crucial to success. College English courses involve an increased volume of reading. Students who might be accustomed to spending an academic quarter, trimester, or semester on a text are going to be stunned when they have a week or two to finish a text, and then they're taking 4 classes that also have a text that they spend a week or two on. And it's not just a week or two to read, that gets you to the assessment. There's volume there. A decreased number of assessments per course, maybe 2 to 4 papers, a midterm and a final. That's a grade that is resting on summative assessment. Not a lot of formative assessments, not a lot of quizzes, not a lot of small projects. The big projects take the grade. High stakes independent writing, pages assigned. I don't know if you remember the blocks like I do. Is this a 2 to 4 page? Is this a 5 to 10 page? Is this 15 to 20 page? And the amount is challenging. And you don't solve that by just making the margins wider. You really have to say something significant. There is increased time in an individual class, 3 hours a week at 1 hour, 3 hours a week in 2 shifts of an hour and a half, or 1 3-hour session. And our students do not spend that time in any individual course for 1 sitting. It is really a challenge that requires stamina. What's so hard is that classes in college are not always going to be in person. And it's not always the student's choice. The only way a student might be able to take a course is online. Or it's hybrid. It meets partially online, and then it meets partially over Zoom, or it only meets every other week. It's hard when you meet with the class every day for less than an hour. Attendance is crucial. Every day that I look at the attendance reports, I don't understand how students can be as absent as they are when 1 or 2 absences in a college course is enough to get you dropped. Fewer assists, professor office hours, or a writing center, no revisions for a higher grade, and it's up to the student to seek that. Very rarely is anyone assigned an office hour. Students with IEPs and 504s must advocate for themselves, identify themselves to a professor, ask for the accommodations that are outlined in their IEP, and college professors are not always very welcoming of those accommodations and modifications, although some are. Cheating or use of AI, which is something we are wrestling with on a regular basis. I wrestled with it today. Students are removed from a course or the college itself if that is detected by a professor. So the stakes are much higher. The stamina needs to increase so that students can be ready. And there are some things that we just can't do here. We don't have one course that meets 3 hours a week to prepare you for that. You have to prepare yourself. So high school and college are different in that in high school there is a community of people supporting you. And I think that's why I prefer to teach at the high school level and being a member of that community. All students are required to attend high school. College is an option. All students take a general course. We don't have majors. Students take a general course and select a major. Students who score a 60 earn credit. When you're in college, you have to earn a C in a major for credit. Teachers are focused on all students attaining mastery of a state-defined curriculum with standards in a content area. Professors are focused on measuring students' attainment of skills outlined in their own syllabus and according to their professional standards, and they can be very personally driven. Teachers and students work together for 90 to 100 days, and this is one of the other reasons that I like teaching at a high school. You see someone every day for a semester or a year, and you know who your students are. Professors and students in college work together for 15 to 17 weeks and may never see each other again for 15 to 45 days. That's all a course is. So students who depend on fostering relationships with their peers and their teachers in high school may have the opportunity to foster such relationships in college, but it's not a gimme. Complex assignments are often workshopped in class, and students must process tasks and assignments on their own. Students take 4 years of English. Students in college take maybe 1 or 2 required English courses, and they're very often not literary. They're driven by rhetoric and composition. And some students manage to test out of those, either for advanced placement and may never take another English class or take one at a higher level. They can also take the school's entrance exam, and if they score at a higher level, they don't have to take the introductory composition class. They take the next level up. So high school and college, both in their content, in their delivery, in their relationship with professors, in the school itself, are different. And yet our goal is to prepare our students for that individual level of stamina. And we do that by gradually releasing them from our care and pushing them toward their own independence, not all of which they like. Thank goodness for Bridge Block. So we focus on preparing students for college by focusing on expository writing across all grades and levels, mostly as a summative unit assessment. So we have text-dependent writing, literary analysis essays, timed writing, persuasive essays, speeches, letters, research papers, and author studies, reflections after reading, viewing, and writing. Sample writing tasks that promote college readiness. And I believe you've had a packet in advance supplied to you. So in the middle school, we've given you 2 assessments, unit summative assessments. For grade 7, exploring refugee stories through literature, which is a final trimester exam. In grade 8, exploring justice and empathy in To Kill a Mockingbird. Both of those are text-dependent, analytical essays. At Abington High School, in grade 9, you have a creative writing vignette project in which students craft vignettes in the style of Sandra Cisneros. In 10, All Souls summative essay asks students to consider the author choices that reveal the purpose of the memoir to the reader. American literature final exam really gets at the essential question, what is American literature, and how do you know? In grade 12, students see the documentary, He Named Me Malala. They read other things, including excerpts from her memoir and the speech that she gave on her 16th birthday in front of the United Nations. And it's a documentary synthesis response. AP Language is a celebrity-timed synthesis essay in which students combine a number of sources to make a statement on the value of celebrity. And in AP Literature, they do a Salinger author study. Having read Catcher in the Rye, they read from his 9 stories. And they make judgments independently about the relationship between the author and his work. So Annually, I report to you on the way students are recruited to AP English courses. You are not locked into a level in grade 9 in English. At the end of every year, we actually do it in February. Teachers, based on performance, recommend you to the next English level. Students can change levels up or down year to year. In AP, if a student usually starts with level 1 English, although I have level 2 sophomores that have expressed an interest in AP. Teachers in grade 10 and 11, both levels, present the AP option to students. Teachers who plan to teach AP offer an information session during bridge block. Teachers confer with students who express interest, especially aspirational candidates who would not choose it for themselves, but maybe if someone gave them an invitation, they might accept. Teachers speak to students who demonstrate reading, writing, and/or speaking skill about AP options if students don't express an interest themselves. And here we have the AP language scores. So 20 through 23, you've seen before. In 24, just a reminder of what those numbers mean, 24% of the class of 2024 took AP language. 90% of them took the test. 21% scored 1, 43% scored 2, 29% reached the score of 3, which is sometimes the score at which colleges accept their performance for credit. 7% scored a 4, no one scored a 5. The average score was 2.21 out of 5. The average in Massachusetts was 3.04, and the average around the world was 2.79. So you get a sense, and you can look at it at the bottom, compared to the Massachusetts, it's 0.83 below, less than 1% below the state, and 0.5% below the world. AP Literature, 32% of the class of 2024 took the course. Only 51% of them took the exam. And it's not unusual to have a fall off either in scores or participation for senior year. By the time students have to declare their intent to take the exam, it's November. They have to pay more if they don't declare then, and they don't get their money back if they decide not to. So it's a real November decision. So one student at 5% scored a 1. 24% scored a 2, 43% scored a 3, and that is about 8 students, 9. 29% scored a 6, and no one scored a 5. And you see they scored better than the students did on language. They've had a year to become acclimated, 2 years to become acclimated to the nature of the test, and they are closer, 0.43, behind the state and 0.21 behind the world. And that is the presentation, but I'm certainly prepared to address any questions about topics in the presentation tonight.
Go ahead.
Going back to your slide on challenges and areas for student growth, the very first bullet point you have there is inviting students beyond minimal compliance.
Yes.
Is there a plan? What is as a department, are there conversations happening about how to begin that process?
So the problem is, as long as the lowest passing score is 60, the lowest passing score is a 60.
Okay.
Many students want to get their ticket punched with a passing grade. They ask, how much do I have to write? How many paragraphs? How many words? How many pages? And for those students who are set on minimal compliance, it is hard to budge them. But we try to fit assignments, and if you take a look at these assignments, they have multiple steps. They have graphic organizers, they have sentence starters, and the idea is to see you can expand your thoughts. Your feedback is usually in the form of questions, not this is how you fix it or this is what you forgot, but what do you think you could add to the second paragraph? And it is in writing conferences and in that feedback on Canvas that we try to move students. And one way I personally try to do that is if you get your feedback and you understand what you need to amplify your response, I will give you an increased grade relative to your increased participation. One of my favorite things that has happened this year is a student who met the standards got an 80. And the student said, I don't want an 80. What do I have to do? And I said, well, you minimally met the standard. Well, what do I do? And I said, what do you think you have to do? More examples? Yes. More explanations? Yes. So we give the students an incentive, and we are very transparent about how grades work. Some offer a revision for grades now, but other teachers and say, well, now you know. Pay it forward into what you've learned on this assessment into your next one. And either way, students have an incentive. They can come to Bridge Block. And the student who is motivated to go beyond the minimal standard, who decides they have a career goal or something they would like to do that involves having higher grades, the hard part is they're very often motivated more by the grade than the content or the skill. And the idea is to really say, well, with this skill, you can, depending on the student and their interest. So we don't have a particular departmental plan. And what we really like to work on most is how do you get that student who is there to punch a ticket to want a C instead of a D. And I think that's super helpful. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go next. A couple questions. The first being at the high school level, because I have no experience there personally, how many texts are students reading in a given year? Is it, because I know you've given examples, but are they reading maybe 5 different texts and analyzing?
Generally speaking, most students read one major text in a marking period of a quarter.
Okay.
So when I look, for instance, at grade 8, they read Almost American Girl, To Kill a Mockingbird, Falling Angels, and Raisin in the Sun. In grade 9, there are 4 texts: The Glass Castle, The House on Mango Street, Of Mice and Men, Romeo and Juliet. And we try to vary genre to genre. In grade 10, although they have 2 print texts, they have 3 documentaries, which they use as source material for responses, observations, and essays. So they might have 2 print texts, but they have 3 additional video texts.
Okay.
So it is usually 4 or more.
Okay. I guess the reason I was asking that question is to invoke that enthusiasm with kids. Like, I know there are books that if you force me to read it, I'm doing minimal because I'm not interested in that.
Yes.
The more text we give students the opportunity to read, the more they can see that there is a book that they enjoy. It may not be Of Mice and Men for them, but it might be Romeo and Juliet. So it's nice to see that there's some variety each year.
So the thing that is so hard, in a day and age when everything that you do can be customized, it's hard to customize a curriculum when you have 130 students who are taking grade 9. Can you choose text so that every student, regardless of their interest, their ethnicity, can see themselves in a book? And when you do that, it's hard to bring people together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I can.
And every student is so individual. And where it is best to do that is in pleasure reading. And we have engaged our librarian, Tricia London. She has engaged us in offering book tastings so that we can get students to see this is a book you might enjoy. We have in the past, although I didn't do it this year, do a Romeo and Juliet read-alike. Let's see other books that have been inspired by Romeo and Juliet. And between Sora and the collection, we have a couple of 100 books that students can choose from. And it's easier to see yourself as a teenager in a young adult novel than it is in a classic work of literature. And the challenge is, well, a lot of students are not necessarily going to see themselves in To Kill a Mockingbird. They are not necessarily going to see themselves in The Catcher in the Rye. I mean, when I was in high school, Catcher in the Rye had only been out for like 15, 20 years. And it was still sensational. And it's just not as sensational. And it's hard to look at a curriculum and say, what is the best play written since 1945? If we're not going to teach Death of a Salesman, what are we going to teach? And has it stood the test of time? Is it quality? And how do you get high school students to care about middle-aged characters? And that's sort of that challenge. So when we have a work that is falling flat, we try to replace that work with something that moves closer to our students, closer to our community. And All Souls is an excellent choice of that. It's a memoir set in South Boston. People have family who are related to characters in the book, who know characters in the book, who have been on those streets. And that's awesome. But it's hard to get that close connection with every student about a neighborhood that's important to them or a time in history. But we work on that year to year.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can appreciate AI and the challenges of having students doing work at home for a variety of reasons. I think back to my high school career, and research papers was, 6-8 hours at home in order to deliver your product.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but please correct me, a lot of work is done in school
Correct.
for writing for various reasons.
Yes.
So having a 1 hour a day or less than 1 hour a day block makes me feel like you can accomplish far less than maybe I could when I was in high school. Is that an accurate statement?
It really depends on who you are as a student, what time you have outside of the school day. You can be a student who goes from school to work. You can be a student who goes from school to practice and doesn't get home till 9 or 10 o'clock at night because the meet was down the Cape or it was in the city. So it's hard. Students at both ends of the ability and interest spectrum often have demands outside of school. So we would workshop that. Students also have bridge block, and they can do that. There are students who are more academically challenged, who often have academic support, 1 or 2 periods a day. There are students who still have learning centers for maybe a semester. But the idea is we want to streamline and focus the assessment, as you can see in this packet, so that students can do it in school. And one of the things that is a challenge with AI is we have students who have shown even when they work in school, they use AI. I mean, there's so many sites. And we have, in some situations where AI is a thing, gone to pencil on loose leaf, and it's collected at whatever stage at the end of the period. So the teacher witnesses that work, and students do not have access to anything but the resources that are provided by the teacher. And that's hard when the trust is broken. And I don't know how many of you grew up handwriting and were liberated by a word processor. Suddenly, all those papers that you scrunched into balls and threw into the wastebasket evaporate. You don't have to use erasable bond. You can continue to draft on an individual word processing document. I myself write very differently on a computer. And then to go back and write by hand slows down a process. It's a challenge. But we still do fit those in. We don't do research papers in every year, but we do write text-dependent essays where students have to quote from the text they're working on. And we make that text available to students in a number of ways. Through the Immersive Reader, we make it available digitally and visually. Through Immersive Reader, we can make it available in audio. Through Immersive Reader, we can also translate it into a number of languages. But it is a challenge. And I don't know what students now spend 6 to 8 hours a night or a week on an individual assignment for an individual class. Usually, an extended research project takes much more time, and students who do it do have to do some work at home.
I think about your comments with college preparedness, and maybe college has changed since I was there too, but that's on you to plan your time. So I'm not sure because I'm not there personally. I'm just interested in your feedback on how people are prepared for college if they don't have to do that time planning.
You cannot be 100% prepared for college. Let me say that. It is different. And you choose to go, and you have incentive for taking these courses. And it's just like in a football game, it's 60 minutes. It could take 3 hours to play that game. but your practice might not be 3 hours long. You might not practice every day, but you have to pull it together for the game, and they do because they want to play. And students who want to play and win and be competitive start doing weight training on their own time. So much of success in college is your desire, your occupational desire, your personal desire in terms of goals. If I got obsessed about a research project, I mean, I'll tell you the ultimate obsession is my dissertation. It's 274 pages long, and it took me 6 years to write over 3 major drafts. But I wanted it, and I stuck with it. Students need to have internal motivation, intrinsic motivation, and you can tell people what it's going to be like, and our students manage time like no other. I mean, think about a high school student you know and that student's schedule. It might not all be academic, but it's time management. And you have to decide at the high school, who am I going to for bridge block? Where do I need extra time? Where do I need extra space?
Okay.
And they do. But the thing is, we do our best by giving them sophisticated assignments, reading complex texts that provide background knowledge. We try to provide that background knowledge. But my colleagues in university at Bridgewater say, you know what? Students figure I have 5 classes and they only meet like 15 hours, so I'm going to pick up a full-time job. And they don't understand until they take a class and have difficulty with it, that for every hour you spend in a college classroom, you got 3 on the other side. That's why the schedules are like that. And I think telling students truth about that is really important. And we can't teach them all the time management. We can teach some of them, but they have to fill in the other half with their own desire. There's just no way.
I have one more. This one I
Sure.
think is quick. Did you say, I missed the date when you said AP language. Is that primarily juniors who are taking
Yes, it
AP
is.
language? And is that consistent, like if I compare the state average, is that consistent generally in the state it's juniors taking it? Or do you have AP language in, our neighboring districts that's a senior level course?
No.
It's mostly
I
junior
mean,
level?
there are schools who kind of do it as an option. The literature class is seen as the most difficult.
Okay.
And usually students roll from language into literature. There are some schools who make each one a semester course if they're in a block schedule and they take them together their senior year, but the exams are only given at the conclusion of a year. And it's rare to have students taking both at the same time. Sometimes, because of the way certain singletons fall, there are students who will elect to take AP language as a senior. But I don't think, the professional development workshops that I've gone to, AP language is usually grade 11, and I haven't heard otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Gonzalez, can I just piggyback off of the AP language?
Sure.
Do you see a trend, or do you see a reason why the trend for the high school scores is down over the past few years, where it's been relatively flat for Mass, and even this, like if you look at last year to this year, it's up a little bit and down like 10% in Abington? Is there, I've been looking into like the reasoning for something like that.
Well, one of the things I can tell you, not so much for language, but for literature, is although 32% of the senior class took this course, only 51% of them took the exam. Mm-hmm. And the student's transcript says AP on it because the syllabus by which they're taught is registered as an AP experience, not their test scores. They don't get their test scores until July or August. So the test score doesn't have value during the school year itself. Students are also taking multiple APs and only taking the exams in the courses that they are most interested in. Many colleges do not give credit for an AP English course unless students score a 4 or a 5, because so many students take them, so many students are reasonably well prepared. And you see, we rarely have students who score 5. 2022 is exceptional. We usually only have 1 or 2 students, and there were 7, and this is like a 20-plus year history. what is also hard about senior year is that once students have secured their acceptance, and it used to be much later. I mean, I didn't find out until April. And many students who apply early decision, now that that's a thing, they know by January. So they said, well, why do I need to take that exam? Why do I need to spend the money on that? Why do I need to create this stress when there are so many other things going on? And it is not usual for those kinds of exams to be given on the college level. You do not generally sit for 3 hours where you have to write on 3 prompts that you have never seen before. If you go back to the college courses, it's 2 to 4 papers that you have had anywhere from a month to 6 weeks to work on, 2 weeks if they're short. And there is sometimes a midterm or a final, but it's usually a paper or a project. So, I mean, I remember going into English classes and being handed a blue book and a prompt, and the teacher left the room. And you wrote by hand. That is not so much the case in English classes as papers and projects. So does that make sense?
I think so. It makes sense from the literature perspective, but from the language perspective, you said that was mostly juniors, right? So that would still, that the whole end of year thing wouldn't affect that. So like the drop of 20 something points in Abington from last year to this year, while the state basically stayed. I'll just say it stayed flat.
It's not 20 points. It's
okay.
0.2.
Yeah, it's 10%.
2.4.
It's about 10%.
Yeah. It can be the caliber of the class.
Okay.
They're 10% of the students who didn't take the test. How would they have scored? I don't know. The state of Massachusetts does not subsidize these tests, and they're over $100 a piece now. And it might be my personal opinion, but I don't think the College Board is not for profit. They want to cast the net wide. They want as many students to take the test as possible, which is awesome. However, most of those students are going to spend over $100 for an experience. And I will tell you, students who score 2s have experience. And when they go to college, they are better prepared. But this is not an Abington situation. The state of Massachusetts, which has some of the most gifted and talented students, see the PISA scores, see the NAEP scores, does not support advanced placement coursework or testing. There is the traditional financial aid sort of waiver, but very few students are in that situation. So that's personally, we removed the requirement to take the test when it became a financial burden to the students.
No, that makes sense.
So that's a very small decrease, really, in a test that has 3 essays and 50 multiple choice questions.
Okay. Thanks.
So I would really like to see more than 2 or 3 students scoring above 3.
So that was my point, is I think if we look at the numbers overall, our students are taking these courses, many of them because they want to be able to use this for college credit. It's for some of these kids, maybe the only way they can afford the college that they want to go to. And the reality of it is, from 2022 through 2024, we have 4, 8, 10, 11 kids who have come out with scores that could potentially be used at the college level. So that stands out. Like,
I would say the number, Ms. Hernandez, is even less than that, because University of Massachusetts in Boston won't take a language score that's less than a 4.
Some of them will only take 5s, but we only have that 11 is for 4 or 5 since 2022. So what are we, I guess, why would we want our kids to take this if the track record right now is that our kids aren't attaining the scores?
And I would say, if students do not enjoy reading and writing for its own sake, this is not a course for a grind. And having taught level 1 sophomores, fully half the students that I've been asked to recommend for AP shouldn't be there, but they want to be there. And when I see the scores come back, those students that I would not recommend, generally speaking, scored 2s and 1s. But the College Board encourages us to cast the net wide, that we are asked as teachers to defer to the desires of parents. So when you take AP Art you already have a portfolio. And the students who take APR 1 or 2 almost always score 5s. You don't have anybody in AP Art who doesn't have a portfolio and hasn't been identified as a strong artist over time. Do you know what I mean? And our students don't read as widely as they once used to. When the College Board started this program, it was a program to unburden students financially from paying for college. At another school I taught at, I had a student who was particularly strong, and he was able to start college as a sophomore. We don't see that very often anymore. It is more a status symbol of who you're sitting with in a classroom. It is more a status symbol of being on the roster, and a lot of students once in are not taking the test at all. In AP Language, most of them do. Look at AP Literature, 54, 47, 66, 70, 51. What's so hard about AP Language is students have to read and write differently. It is often the first time they have been subject to timed writing. And their scores count on what can you do in 40 minutes. That's the time limit that AP suggests should be spent on a given essay, on a prompt they've never seen before. And that transition from spending a month with a book to here's a prompt, I hope you have something that you can say about this argument in your supplied sources in the synthesis question. It is an opportunity, but it is not a guarantee. I wish it were. I wish, if we wanted to have those results as a community, we would exclude on teacher recommendation any student we think isn't going to do well. But you rule out the opportunity to be surprised by the student who you didn't think would do well, would. And we have had situations within the last 3 to 5 years where students who want to try were counseled out of the course after struggling for 1 marking period. So the teacher kind of takes a gamble too. Do I have a class of students who really have the capacity to do this? Does everybody get to play varsity who wants to play varsity just because they want to play varsity? If they're not good enough, they're not going to play there. And students certainly have an opportunity to work on their personal record, but a coach is not going to collect students who don't have the skills or show capacity for improvement. Only your best play varsity, but that's not the way we handle AP Language. We invite as many students to the table who want to be there and whose families want them to be there. And some of them score 1s and 2s. Most of them score 3s. And yes, it is pretty flat. I think that tells you a lot about our community. I think it tells you a lot about individuals. And exceeding expectations is rare. A 5 is a rare score everywhere. We have 130 students, and we have almost a quarter to a third of our students in the AP program. The opportunity is being afforded them, but part of it's the stamina themselves. You'll ask them, did you read? Do you take the feedback? Do you look at your scores? How much do you want this? And it's a hard thing to do, to develop perception, maturity, and background knowledge. But I know students who want to play varsity who are in the weight room, and they practice on their own time, and they make that a goal. We have scholars who do that too, but it's rare. And it changes from population to population. The Abington population has changed a lot since I've started teaching here. And young people, not just in Abington, have changed in the value of reading, in the value of writing. And I don't mean to say kids are writing all like text speak, and they're kind of dumbing down their work. They're thoughtful people. But the value on this kind of reading and writing is not the same as it has been, because there is a change going on. There is an evolution in our attitude toward the written word. I'm pleased that people are taking the opportunity and making the effort because they find out something about themselves and how they compare to a larger population. The other thing that used to focus people is final exams, which we don't have, midterms or finals. That keeps people pretty busy toward the end of the year, keeps the feet to the fire. But we don't do that. And we moved away from those exams because to hold an exam schedule, I think, for all 7 classes is not equal. And we were having students doing multiple exams on a day, not 2 in a day. And that attitude has changed. But maybe the end of the year would be different if we had final exams. We don't.
Can I piggyback off that?
Please.
And ask, is there any way to get like an assessment after the AP exams to see where the kids did wrong, or the students, and if it's consistent over each one that took? And then
Sure.
The other question I have is if, since we're talking about comparing to playing sports, is there a way to have like scrimmages for the kids, like practice exams to get them prepared for this AP exam so that they can have that little prompt to read and write and kind of just practice?
Most every assessment given in AP is a model AP question taken from the archive of AP tests. So they have seen official College Board questions several times during the school year, maybe 10 times to a dozen. So they have seen that. And when teachers get the reports back, they do get the report by the kind of exam, the kind of question it is. Is it the synthesis? Is it the constructed argument? Is it the analytical piece? So we do have subscores broken down that way. The other thing is most often the teacher who teaches a set of students AP language loops with them to AP literature. So they've had a chance to look at that feedback and employ it in the next year. So within the confines of class, they do. And occasionally, we have students sit for one full sample exam, but that takes 3.5 hours, and it takes them out of other classes to do that. It's possible to do, and we've done it before. But students do use College Board materials. They do scrimmage on that. And we think that's part of instruction, preparing students for the test. That is still, even though many students don't take the exam, they do practice in exam conditions, and the instruction is geared toward the exam because the College Board won't let you put AP on a transcript unless your syllabus has been audited and approved. And they look very carefully at your assessments and how often you give students a chance to practice.
Oh, can I ask one more?
Oh, please.
So for the students that do not take AP classes, are they prepared for college because they don't get as much of the writing prompts and the other, I guess, assessments that the AP class gets? Like, how is that restructured for those students?
So the AP exam does not accurately represent the kinds of assessments students are doing in college. They don't sit down in 2.5 hours and write 3 essays on topics they've never seen before. So if you take a look at the packet that I supplied to you of summative assessments that are text dependent, since 7th grade, students have been doing 2, and you just have 1 from each grade level. Students have been doing 3 or 4 summative, argumentative, or literary analysis essays a year at all levels. So someone who takes level 2 sophomore English is taking the same assessments as people who take level 1 sophomore English, and they write the same prompt. They might be scaffolded a little different, but they see what that assessment is. They get scored on a prompt in the same way. They get feedback, and they have an opportunity to improve. So it's not like the AP students are the only ones who are writing exams. The AP students are writing them under a timed condition. I mean, they do some papers that take time, like you look at the author study on Salinger. That's a research paper that students do over time with resources from databases in conjunction with the library, with print texts that are made available to them. So they have that. There are research papers that are done in the other classes as well. The difference is kind of in intensity. But the students who take level 2 or level 1 English go on to college and succeed if they have the stamina and they are intrinsically motivated. I think that's, you know, a student who is minimally invested, who scores a C and a D, is going to struggle in college. If they don't meet the standards of the Massachusetts curriculum by which our curriculum are developed, they're going to struggle in college. They might be able to have a transcript and someone can admit them, but students say, colleges say plenty of goodbyes to students who struggle in their freshman year. after a semester or a year. And it is hard if the student is doing everything the student can to succeed, going to see the professor, going to the writing center, spending 3 hours studying, preparing, reading, and so forth. We give the students the tools. It's up to them to use them. And if students struggle in college, the question is, well, what didn't we do? Where did you struggle? And not only what didn't we do, what didn't you do? So it is a shared responsibility. Just because someone's admitted to college doesn't mean they're going to be successful unless they're willing to do the work. So they're given that opportunity. And if you take a look at that packet, imagine that here's the packet that I gave you, times 3 or 4. This is what students have been given the opportunity to be college ready for. You can only take that opportunity and do with it what you will. And if students do follow the directions, if they are attentive, if they read, if they write, they revise, and they edit, they'll be ready. But nothing can prepare you for college precisely except college itself. We can't duplicate those conditions. And I don't mean to sound like a cop-out, but some of the responsibility rests on students themselves. We can prepare them, we can give them the tools. What they build is on them too. Students who don't score a 4 or a 5 or a 3 on the AP exam, they do very well in college. This is one test. Mm-hmm. Have you taken a look at your driver's license test recently? Your license? Do you like that picture? Do you have better pictures of yourself? Do you remember what the conditions of that day were when you went to get that picture taken? Could you have spent a lot of time getting ready for that photo moment? At a certain point, you just give up and say they're getting whatever picture they are. And hopefully you won't have to show your license to too many people. But that test is one test. And some students score well on the assessments in their class with their teacher because a high school community is about support. That's one test made by someone who has never met them. And I mean, some students can apply that. And I guess I would go back to here. Some people do more than remembering. They do more than understanding. They can apply the skills they learn in one situation to another. They can analyze a task. They can evaluate it. And they are ready to create things. Not everybody gets all the way up. Sometimes you've seen it as a ladder. Not everyone achieves the highest level of thinking, although we certainly do give them the opportunity to try.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank
Appreciate you giving so much of your time here
Oh.
tonight.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go out of order right now. Okay. I'm going to move to Miss Daisy to come and talk to us about 2 different trips for the Abington High School next year. Miss Daisy, you're just going to do each one separately, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So,
I just want to get this.
I don't have anything to plug in, I just figured.
Yeah.
you'd have it. And I do just want to build on what Liz just said and say that my daughter scored a 1 on her AP Calc test and went on to graduate with a 4.0 and is now a math teacher. So I do think it's just one test. And for her, it worked out better that she had to retake Calc, in college. I have the one up for Scotland, Ireland
Yeah.
right now. I don't know if
fine.
you.
Nope, that's the order we have it to.
Okay, so Erin Slayton and Bridget Wakeland so every year at the beginning of the year, probably around October, I send out an email. For those of you that don't know, I am the global travel advisor, so all trips come through me. I think administration was like, we have another question, You can do this now. So I give them a date and say, if you want to go on a trip, send me all of the information by this date. And I got 2. So Erin Slayton and Bridget would like to go to Scotland and Ireland. As you can see on the itinerary you have, the February vacation is significantly cheaper, so they have elected to go during February vacation. And so that's what we're looking at right now. This price is based on 20 to 24 students. I don't know, they say that it's been across the state, across the country, situation, we used to have to turn kids away. We would get 50 applying for a trip and be told we could take 27. And now we're like begging kids to come on a trip. So I don't know, to be honest, and they both are aware that if we don't get the numbers that we need for the price that we need, that they may not run, or that maybe they'll change gears and pick a different destination. But as of right now, they're aiming to go to Ireland and Scotland. And the itinerary is on the left, on the bottom. On the left is everything that comes with this, the price of this trip. I will say that on the bottom, you can see it clearly says sample itinerary. As we get into like the nitty gritty, you start to go, well, wait a minute, we're doing like a tour. Can we have a day where we do something more active? And we just kind of break it up that way. But
Makes
for the
sense.
most part, what you see right there is what you're getting.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Miss Daisy?
Can you remind me the two trips that the one that just came back and the one that's going in April, are they both Grand Classroom or are they EF?
Neither. No, not neither. They're not. Let me backtrack. We used to use EF exclusively for
Yep.
no other reason than our then high school principal brought in a rep from EF, and that's what we used. And it was fantastic. I have no problems with EF. When COVID hit and we had several trips canceled, parents were like, well, we're not getting enough money back. How can you do this to us? Again, it was not an Abington thing, and it was not an EF thing. It was like all travel companies, they couldn't lose the money. They had already doled out some for this and that. So there was sort of like a bad taste, I think, from some parents who were like, I will never let one of my kids go on. And we're thinking, well, it's only a year out and you might still have kids in the school. So we switched. Kate Casey had been in the process of planning a trip through Grand Classroom. I know the middle school was using Grand Classroom. Where my daughter teaches, they did a trip with Grand Classroom. So I was like, all right, let's look into this. Have no problems with Grand Classroom either. And then this year, Kate Ward, so they just went to Italy with Grand Classroom that they just got back.
Okay.
Kate Ward wants to do a trip to Costa Rica. The thing about Grand Classroom is I think they might possibly give you a little more exciting of an itinerary, if I may say. Like, they let you say things like, we want cooking lessons, we want dancing lessons, like, we want to build all this stuff in. I will say that EF, at the beginning, and we didn't know much going into this. You'd go on an EF trip and they were like, you have 3 hours to go explore Madrid by yourself. And then in hindsight, you go, that's a terrible idea to give teenagers 3 hours to go walk around Madrid. So you don't know what you don't know. And now that we know, we are like, fill this itinerary. I mean, Anna went to Italy. You can ask her, were you busy like most of the time, constantly? So all trips with Grand Classroom are private. Whereas EF and now what we're using for Kate Ward's trip is ACIS. And that came about through no reason other than Bridget Wakeland was at the gym and there was a woman next to her and they started talking and she said she's a school teacher and she's traveling to Belize. This was last year. And she said, oh, I work for ACIS. And we set up a meeting, we met with her. And I think we got like a bit of a deal in the sense that, ooh, this is your first trip with us. We'll give you a private trip at just 11 people instead of the 20 that you needed. And they came in a day longer and $100 and something less than what Grand Classroom was offering. And Grand Classroom was still saying, you got to get to 20, or you got to get to 15, or something we were not going to get. So we switched and went to ACIS. I don't think we'll get that kind of a deal. When I talk about Christina's trip, I'll explain why we went back to EF. So we're just kind of
Exploring.
Oh, yes,
But all
exactly.
have similar
I get to see how many other
safety-
travel companies are out there that will give us a first-time
First-time
deal.
deal.
What was that? I'm sorry.
But all similar safety, cultural
Oh, yeah, all
immersion,
similar
all
of what's
that. Okay.
included, all similar in terms, yes. So
Okay.
what I also learned was I went to Japan with Miss Poirier one year. We only had 9 kids, so we traveled with multiple schools. There were 4 different schools going. And we only had one boy on our trip, and he was in hotel rooms with kids from other trips, and that was not the best because not everybody has the application process we do, and they take anybody who can go. And we made it work and we rearranged. So I told EF and ACIS, if we needed to ever go with another school, like we are still only rooming. Like if we only have one boy on our trip, then that kid is getting a single room. Like we're not mixing schools. I can handle on a bus, and that's really all you need to do if you go with another school is be on the same bus with them. So yeah, again, it's a learning process. But
Any other-
yes, all things are equal, pretty much.
Any other questions from Miss Daisy about this trip only?
Am I missing the grade levels on this one?
Oh, I'm sorry. All trips by like, so basically we've always only ever done junior, senior trips. And then Miss Mahana offered a freshman, sophomore trip to the Grand Canyon because we started to think, oh, we've got this is going to be great. We are going to do, middle school is going to have their like Washington or Pennsylvania trip. And then in freshman, sophomore year, they can go somewhere in the country, but further away than Washington, D.C. And then junior, senior year, they'll leave the country. So it worked out great for her. And then she didn't offer one last year.
Well, a lot of kids dropped out. They said they weren't going to do it again, and then there was a crew of, I don't know, current sophomores who may have put the hard press on to have another trip.
Yeah, so last year there was not a freshman, sophomore trip. There was not like the interest, there was anything. And then this year, after we booked the trips, there was definitely in Miss Mahana's class, they were begging her last year, can we just go? We want to go to Hawaii, which was like $5,000. And we said no. And then I said, well, technically Puerto Rico is in the United States. So, and that was a huge draw for them and they were excited. And yes, she got more people for her trip than either place did. But all I can do every October is say, who wants to run a trip next year? And if I don't get somebody who offers it, so when kids come and they're like, where's our freshman, sophomore trip? You might see me back here when I present my
But
thing
these
for-
ones are
for
both
wellness.
junior, senior.
These ones are both junior, senior. As of now, no one has offered to run a freshman, sophomore trip.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No. I'll be looking for a motion to approve the Abington High School trip to Ireland and Scotland in February 2026 as presented.
I make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Maybe tell them they can go to Ireland. And we'll go on, God, Karen, you go on to the next one.
All right. So, originally Christina Wilson wanted to do a trip to the Galapagos, and Kara Howell she was running a trip to Portugal and Spain that got shut down by COVID. And she was like, I'm going to revamp that one. And then Christina was told that the Galapagos through Grand Classroom was like $5,000 something. And she's like, I don't know. But she understands that it's like the trip of a lifetime. You are far more likely to take yourself to Ireland on your own than you are to go to the Galapagos. But the price was, I'm like, you can try it, Christina, but I don't know if it's going to run. And then Kara decided she was not going to go to Spain and Portugal and join forces with Christina. And then through EF, they got like a significantly cheaper price. I mean, it's still more than going to Ireland, don't get me wrong, but again, it still is like, it's hard to get to. It's expensive for a reason. They don't want like everybody going there the way that you'd go to Disney World.
Miss Daisy, do you have a price?
They don't give the same, the price for this trip, so if you go, because they don't have a nice cute one-page itinerary that Growing Classroom does, it is $4,800. I want to say, give or take, like $50 or so.
Okay.
And it ends on the day 9. Like, they're not doing that 3-day tour extension that you can see in blue, or I don't know if you got them in color or all black and white, but it ends on the day 9.
This is during April vacation.
So this one's
next year.
during April vacation, yes.
Does anybody have questions for Miss Daisy
How
on
many
this?
kids do they need?
This one needs 15, but this one, they said that, like, Grand Classroom won't run a trip with another school. It's Abington or nothing. EF will let you go with another school, and I have already confirmed that if we elected to do that, it would be only our kids sharing hotel rooms.
Okay.
And the price wouldn't necessarily go down
If we joined a large enough school that, like, yes, the more people you have on a trip, the lower the price is. We just find, again, like I said, other schools just don't have the same, like, acceptance policy as we do. And when you just do anybody who wants to come can come, it can get a little bit
Have we ever had
problematic.
a contact from like a local, one of the nearby schools to try and run a trip dually with a local?
We have not. I have put out to like people I knew in other schools when I knew that one of our trips was not gonna run, and I was like, does anybody want to do this? Actually, no, that's not true. We did reach out, I think, once to Rockland, but it didn't like line up with what they were doing or what they were wanting to do. Every year I try to tell my daughter, like, we should do a Cohasset Abington trip, and then they get all the people they need. So, although I think this year, if I'm not mistaken, they opened up to be sophomore, junior, senior, which is always, maybe it's a possibility. Maybe instead of running a separate freshman, sophomore trip, we do. Or maybe we just go to sophomore, juniors, because it seems like we're losing seniors in great numbers. The first trip we did back after COVID, we had 36 kids on that trip, and they were predominantly seniors, but no one had traveled anywhere for years. And now they're back to, sorry, I need to go to Aruba. I'm not paying for a trip. So we do usually get more juniors than seniors, so maybe that's an option, is to go sophomore, juniors, so that, well, freshmen, sophomores now, that will be
Miss
sophomore,
Daisy,
junior next
that
year.
price is about based around the 15 people, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Does anybody else have any questions for Miss Daisy? No. If not, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the Abington High School trip to the Galapagos Islands in April 2026 as presented.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you spending some extra time here with us
I
tonight.
appreciate you letting me skip the.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you.
Chris, I'm going to go back to you. All right, so we're going to go back to where we were. Dr. Basta, update on Chet Millett and the Deidre Volunteer Service Awards.
Good evening, everybody. I will try to keep this as short as I can. That's good. I think I project. So it is that time of year again when we are about to enter the award season here in Abington. We will be releasing the notification to the public on March 10th. Announcing that nominations are open for the Chester Millett Jr. Outstanding Certified and Support Staff Awards. You might remember that the awards that honor former Superintendent Chester Millett Jr. are to be presented annually by the Abington School Committee to a certified staff member and a support staff member for their performance who by their performance has demonstrated a willingness to assume responsibilities and perform deeds well above and beyond those normally expected, thereby distinguishing them by their great examples, dedication, perseverance, and commitment to helping students. That's the official award, so I feel like I have to read that word for word.
No problem.
So on March 10th, that will be sent out to the community via Constant Contact. There'll be a link in the Constant Contact for a nomination form. It will also be posted on the Abington Public Schools website. Students, families, staff members can nominate any certified staff or support staff at any of Abington schools. You can make more than one nomination for each of the two awards, one for certified staff, one for support staff. You just have to fill out a new form for each nomination. After the forms will close on April 2nd. So the nomination window is March 10th to April 2nd. And then a committee made up of parents, staff, and administrators will review the nominations the week of April 21st after we have removed all of identifying information, including names and pronouns. I am looking for a member of the school committee to serve on that review committee. Is anybody interested?
If anybody's interested, just let me know.
Perfect. And then the recipients of the certified and support staff awards will be announced during Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week in May. Anybody have any questions about the Chet Millett Awards?
No.
Great. And then right alongside the Chet Millett Award, the same time of year, on behalf of the Abington Townwide PTO, I typically announce the Deirdre Volunteer Service Award. That was founded by the Abington Townwide PTO in memory of a devoted Abington Public Schools parent volunteer. Deirdre Zaccardi devoted many hours to Abington and its school community to champion inclusion, expand programming, and improve childhood education. She was a constant presence at PTO and school committee meetings where she advocated passionately for full-day kindergarten and many other programs and activities that benefited Abington students. Her legacy lives on through this Volunteer Service Award. So this service award will be presented annually by the PTO to a caregiver for their voluntary participation in service activities that help improve both the Abington Public Schools and its community in ways that emulate Deirdre's dedication. Examples of that type of dedication include event creation or organization, fundraising, advocating for educational initiatives, school funding or programming, and executing activities beyond the intended expectation. So in the same constant contact that you'll be receiving on March 10th about the Chet Millett Award, you will also see the announcement about the Deirdre Volunteer Service Award. There will also be a link in there for a nomination form, and the same rules apply. You can nominate as many people as you want. You just need to complete a new form for each nomination. The form will also close on April 2nd, so March 10th to April 2nd for all 3 awards. I know that's a question every year. People always wonder about when the nominations close. And then a little bit earlier, there will be a committee that the PTO will organize that will review the nominations, and they will announce the winner the week of April 21st. We are always excited to recognize excellence in education and the importance of volunteerism here in Abington, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the information. Any
you.
questions?
I would just encourage people. The world is hard right now. Everybody, it's so easy to see where things aren't necessarily working. So if people can take a minute to let somebody else know when things are going well and going right, it means the world to people on the other end. So, yeah.
Agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
You want to keep going?
Go ahead.
All right. Next up for you, we have the proposed 2025-2026 school calendar in your packet. Just to remind you, the Board of Education for the Commonwealth requires schools to be in session for 180 school days, and the structured learning time, sometimes referred to as time on learning, requirement for elementary schools is 900 hours, and the requirement for secondary schools, which is middle schools and high schools, is 990 hours. Additionally, our teacher contract here in Abington requires that our teachers work 182.5 days. This calendar meets all of those parameters. Some things, and it also allows us to continue providing a schedule of robust professional development for all of our staff. Of note, it's something that we've discussed over the last few years has been when there are large-scale elections, the Tuesday after Labor Day, there is a conflict at Beaverbrook in the parking lot typically with all of our new kindergarten families arriving for the first day, and it's also a large election. This coming year doesn't happen to be a large election, so we don't think there would be a significant disruption. However, we think it's probably a good practice to get in the habit of having kindergarten and AEP start on the Wednesday after Labor Day, so that we never have to worry about kindergarten parents in the parking lot during an election again on their first day dropping off their kids, and there being some confusion with elections. I am happy to answer any questions, and it looks like Dr. Felicia wants to add something.
Or Dr. Michelle over there.
Dr. Felicia Micheli, yes.
It's also important to note that kindergarten doesn't have a required number of school
Correct.
days.
Thank you.
That's why we can start after Labor Day.
Right, thank you. Kindergarten is not mandatory, so we also don't have that requirement. Danielle?
Yeah, so I just want to let everybody know, Dr. Boston and I went back and forth a couple different times on like 4 different versions of calendars. This is the one that I kind of felt most comfortable with. I mean, most of the iterations revolved around the Christmas break. I'll just put that out there. This is the one that made the most sense. The one we're presenting right now has school on Monday the 22nd and a half day on Tuesday the 23rd, and then not returning until Monday, January 5th. So there were obviously different iterations. You can probably figure out what they were around that, but that's the one that we're presenting right now. Anything is obviously on the table, but that's what I felt most comfortable bringing forward. What made sense when they looked back to when the last time Christmas was on a Thursday, this was kind of how it went. I don't know if there was a half day on the 23rd. That one kind of made sense, though, to do if we could. So, and then, yeah, if there's any questions for Dr. Vostar or Dr. Michella.
I don't have a question, just a comment, and the dates down below. For for example, I think a lot of them are off. Open house for Abington High School on September 5th is a Friday.
Those are probably all this year's. Are those all this
yeah,
year's
so-
dates? That's all okay.
Yeah, so it's most
look
of the
at those,
dates,
yeah.
I think. So I would just check them all, because I found a bunch, teacher conferences, I just picked a couple dates and they were all a little off. Conferences, I think usually Thursday, Friday, and I think according to these dates, it's like
We
Wednesday,
did,
Thursday.
the teacher conferences are correct. We changed them to be Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay, so then those are right. Yep.
But the open house dates for the middle school and the high school, well, I would say it's the high school, because
Yep.
the middle school
Is the 20th,
matches.
yeah.
So I think it's just the high school.
Yep.
That's probably, I'm hoping that's the only incorrect date there.
That one I'm assuming is not a Friday night.
No.
It might be.
I can assure you it's not. Friday.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
That was it.
Thank
That
you.
was my only comment.
Can I ask the dates that we have asterisked on there, do we have to include that information?
I'm interested to hear why you would like not to. I guess the Jewish holidays are on there really for staff to make sure that we are being respectful and not assigning homework or major projects to students due around those dates.
Okay.
And not having athletic events.
Not having athletic events, et cetera.
Okay.
Music concerts.
Perfect.
I
That's
think
really
I know
what
why. I think I know why you're asking. So we can explore
No,
that if you'd like to take it.
question asked, question answered, that makes sense why you would put that on there, to be sure that other things aren't posted on that day.
Great.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
If we have those things, are we including the other holidays celebrated by other faiths
Like Eid.
that are not Jewish Catholic holidays? That would be my question, is if we're including these, should we be including the others?
That's kind of why I asked it,
Mm-hmm.
seemed, yeah.
I think that's something we could consider.
Or maybe just more of an internal memo,
Right, right.
You
And
know.
our staff absolutely are,
information that staff needs to know, but maybe this is not where it needs to be known.
right.
We can do that.
I just feel like there's a lot that goes on in the calendar, so if we can cut back on
Right.
some of the informational things that aren't based around specifically what needs to happen,
Mhm.
then if we can clean it up for families, there we go.
Yeah. And pointing people's eyes to one particular date that school is in session. I don't mind saying that, so. If there's nothing else, is there?
Can I ask one
Yeah,
more
go ahead.
question? I believe this year the AMS open house was split between 5, 6, and 7, 8. Is that changing for next year?
Correct.
That is fantastic news.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Thank
It
you.
wasn't my idea, but I will take credit for it.
I very much, as an incoming 7th grader, she was not okay with having to go after to open house after. So I like that move. So thank you.
In 8th grade, having the high school, the access to the high school
The-
open house that
the
night.
family night.
That was very cool. So, I
Great.
don't know if we plan on doing that again, but we found the benefit.
Yes, it matches up with the middle school conferences
Perfect.
on November 5th.
Anyone else have any questions?
Nope.
Are we good to vote on this now? Okay, so I'll be looking for a motion to approve the 2025-2026 school calendar as presented by Dr. Bosta.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Could I ask you guys to send that out, constant contact, at some point this
Yep,
week? Thank
yep.
you.
Once we have the correct
Yeah, yeah.
open house
Yeah, no
at the
problem.
high school.
And we'll remove the holidays.
Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead, Kristen, keep going.
The last thing I have for you is actually on behalf of Abington High School. We are recommending adding the course Psychology Level 1 to the program of studies for 2025-2026, which you previously approved. It is presently offered as an unleveled elective. However, we have an opportunity to offer it for college credit in conjunction with the dual enrollment partnership with Quincy College that you learned about previously, only if we offer it as a Level 1 course. The content of the course will not be changing. This is really just semantics. It's changing the name and making it a level 1 versus being unleveled. We'll be informing students who have already made an unleveled psychology or AP psychology schedule request for next year. We'll be letting them know about this change and giving them the opportunity to switch to this level 1 semester course for college credit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that change the GPA potential if it's unleveled versus level 1?
That's a really good question. I
believe
believe
that's
it
correct,
does. Yeah.
It does, so it counts for more. So your GPA
Correct.
could potentially go up as a result of this change.
More weight.
And entice kids to take it
Yeah.
as well.
This
Okay.
this is a half-year course, correct?
Yes.
Are we exploring options to potentially offer a, like, second half of the year course? Because if I'm not mistaken, AP Psych is a full year course. This is a half year. Are we looking to maybe increase our offerings with the dual enrollment down the road so that they can do one half of the year and then the other half of the year something else?
I can't say what they're exploring, but I can say that it will probably depend on the success of this program as we dip our toes into the dual enrollment arena.
Okay.
What the response is and how students and families feel the interaction is with Quincy College.
Okay.
But I don't see that as something they wouldn't consider.
Any other questions for Dr. Basta? If not, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the 2025-2026 proposed revision to the program of studies as presented by Dr. Basta.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Thank
set. Dr. Robbins, I'll take the next one. If there's any questions, they can just go to you. So up next is a request for a home education, homeschooling program. We've kind of seen these routinely. If anyone has any questions, Dr. Robbins is happy to answer them, but if not, I guess let me ask first, does anybody have any questions? No?
Nope.
So I'll be looking for a motion to approve the recommended home education programs for the 2024-2025 school year as recommended in the attached by Dr. Robbins.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. You're all set, James. Up next, for the first time, but not the last, report of the school committee student representative, Anna Brown.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This should not be long.
Don't worry about it.
You take as
Yeah,
long
don't worry
as
about
you
it.
want.
First, I wanted to talk about the new cell phone policy this year. I think it's going pretty well. It's honestly, at least for me, not super different from last year. Because we're pretty busy at school usually. We don't have much of an opportunity to use our phones.
Anna, can I just ask you to pull the mic closer to you, just because I don't know if it's how it's coming through on the camera.
And I'd say that a lot of the other students do pretty well with it. And definitely from teachers and students, I've heard that it allows us to be a lot more productive with our time and actually talk to each other. There's always going to be students that don't like it, but I think it is a good policy. And I think especially for the freshmen coming from the middle school with much more strict phone policy, it's an easy change for them, or not much of a change. So I think it's going well. And then this is sort of old news at this point, but I wanted to talk about the bathroom vandalism that happened before winter break. Just sort of to point out that the students really cared about this when it happened. And most of us saw this as pretty embarrassing behavior on behalf of whoever did it. And I know that Dr. Bassa and Miss Casey met with students in small groups, which I sadly did not have the chance to attend because I was away. But I heard pretty good things about how those went. Some students think that more could have been done, but I feel like nobody actually said what could have been done. So that's hard. And then I also wanted to mention that after this happened, the GSA, the Black and Brown Student Union, and the Braza Club came together and met and made posters that displayed how these behaviors were not accepted by the students at the high school. Just to point out that this affected us and that we cared and did something about it. But that's all.
Well, no, yeah, well, thank you. I've seen, I mean, the posters are all over. They're still up all over, so that's fantastic. You know, thank you for talking about it. I know it was a while ago, so, but still, great to bring up, and it's great to get the student perspective on it as well. The cell phone policy, when I say I'm not usually that surprised, I am stunned with how little issue that has been this year. So even just I have a high schooler now too, but I guess it's everybody's following the same thing, so nobody's left out in the cold. Thank you. I appreciate getting your perspective on it. That's great. That's kind of what we're looking to do by doing this. So as you have stuff, feel free to talk to Mr. Bourne. If anybody else wants to just.
I actually just had a quick question. You mentioned that it will not be a big transition, not a change for the incoming freshmen for next year, because the cell phone policy is stricter at the middle school than it is at the high school. And that was just interesting to me, and just wondering what the differences are, and would we have it be consistent so that there is no change between the middle school and the high school? So just an interesting comment.
Yeah, definitely, at least when I switched from the middle school to the high school, there was a pretty drastic change because they were definitely a lot looser on phones at the high school. Especially, I think the biggest was at the middle school, we could not use our phones at lunch or like ever, and then at the high school we could, which I think that it's definitely an easier transition for them, but definitely like the seniors and the juniors struggled more with the change.
So you feel like the policy now is consistent with the middle school?
So
Yeah.
the policies are a little different. So at the middle school, it's no cell phones from when you walk in to when you walk out.
Yeah.
The high school is no cell phones during any instructional time. So you can use your cell phone in the hallways, you can use your cell phone at lunch. That's it.
Yep.
Thank you. I think that's a good way. The middle school is 0 and the high school is at times,
Yeah.
but not at all when there's instruction.
And Dr. Michelle, you talked to me about when you guys went forward with this, the thinking was, you're in high school now, as long as if you don't blow the opportunity, it's giving you a little bit more freedom to be able to use it.
Yes, when you're not in front of a teacher, or you're not supposed to be studying, or you're not in a learning center, then you're, no phones at bridge block, then you can use your phone.
Yeah, do you find that more people are talking to each other at lunch or in the hallways? Like, do you see that people are pulling them out less just because they've gotten in the habit of not having them all day, or not really?
Not necessarily. I think they still come out a lot, maybe more in the hallway than they did last year because they're away
Okay.
during class. But during class, we definitely talk more. But
Great to hear.
I like that.
Yes.
It's a great update. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
So I guess it's kind of in order, but we're going to skip Ms. Day's part. So Dr. Michelle, I know it's going to be probably Sarah, right, for the budget?
Actually, it's going to be me tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have an update on our FY26 school department budget. Sarah and I continue to work with the town officials to come to our consensus budget prior to town meeting, which is on April 7th, Monday night, here in the middle high school auditorium. So we have been working with the town finance officials. Scott Lambiasi, the town manager, was here at our last school committee meeting talking about the proposal around a trash fee in Abington at our last meeting. So through our continued conversations with them, we have made a couple of changes to our proposed budget that you have in front of you. At this time, there are, it's a minimal impact to our our last proposal that you saw. So we're still at what we consider a level service budget. So it's the services that we have this year replicated to next year. You'll see two changes. One is we are using a 75% reimbursement rate for circuit breaker. We had anticipated earlier in the year 70%, and as we move through closer to town meeting, we feel more confident that the state's going to reimburse us at 75%, which is the difference is $94,198. So our budget goes down by that much. Because it's a reimbursement. And then the town agreed to take $48,621 that we had in our instructional materials budget and move that amount into capital. So we'll still have those funds next year to use for instructional materials, but not part of our general fund budget. They would become part of the town's capital plan to be funded along with the technology laptops and the other instructional material that we had. So right now, we're looking at an increase to the FY25 budget of $1,560,623 for a preliminary budget of $32,354,265, or a 5.07% increase over this year for next year.
Thank you.
If anyone.
This is kind of the quote unquote working budget that town hall's working with at this point in time for us.
That is correct.
Okay.
So what I anticipate is that the only budget that the school committee has voted on thus far was the original budget that we presented in early January. So either at our next school committee meeting at the end of March or our meeting right before town meeting, I will ask the school committee to vote the final budget number going into
All right,
town.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Can I just state what was never obvious to me until I sat at this table, is that when we move items into the capital plan as a town, it means that if they need to go back into our operating plan, it makes that 5.07 look much higher, even though it's the same expenses, it's just different geography. So I'm just pointing out that in the event those moved to capital go into our operating budget, it is going to look like we have a higher increase than the economic benefit the students receive.
Correct.
Okay.
And the 5.07% is a level service budget, so this
No
is
new staff.
nothing new.
No new services. We're in desperate need of another bus, but at this point, we're not willing to cut staff to get that, or cut supplies and materials that we also desperately need for that. So yes. The other thing, Melanie, to your question, is when things are funded outside of the general fund budget, then it's really using what's called free cash, or the one-time money that we can't automatically anticipate for next year for this year. So, for example, one of the risks, if you will, of not having something like technology in our operating budget is that if next year there isn't money to fund capital items, then we still need that $240,000. It is a capital item, but it's something that, it's kind of like police cars. Like you need to replace police cars. We've made a commitment to technology. So that's the risk in it, but with today's economy and the budgets the way they are, if this is how we can fund them, this is how we would want to fund them.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Michella. Where am I? I forget where I was. Oh, okay. New business and establishment of the next school committee meeting, Tuesday, March 25th, 2025, here in the library at 6:30 p.m. Just some dates to remember. Tuesday, March 11th is the CPAC meeting at 6:30 p.m. here in the library. Also on Tuesday, March 11th at 6 p.m. is Substance Abuse Educational Night downstairs in the cafeteria. On Thursday, March 13th and Friday, March 14th at 7 p.m. and Saturday, March 15th at 2 p.m., Abington High School Drama will present Once Upon a Mattress. Anybody who's been to any of the productions done by Abington High School Drama, you know it's going to be a great show. So that's the plug right there to go to at least one of them, if not more. Wednesday, March 19th is an in-service early release day for the district. And last one on Thursday, March 27th at 6:30 p.m. here in the auditorium, the Abington Education Foundation is going to have Rob Surrett performing. Artist extraordinaire Rob Surrett performing an all-ages show at the Abington Middle High School auditorium. Rob has appeared on The Today Show, The Tonight Show, Good Morning America, and The Oprah Winfrey Show. He is a top-tier master fine artist for Disney, Lucasfilm, DC Comics, DreamWorks, Muppets, and Marvel. In addition, 6 free Disney fine art prints will be given away as door prizes to those in attendance. So AEF sent me that yesterday, ended up in my junk email accidentally, and so I wanted to make sure I just said that for them.
Can I add one more item, Chris?
Go ahead.
I believe it's 3:20, and I believe at 7 o'clock, there's an open mic night here in the high school.
Yes.
Which is a
Yep.
super cool experience if you haven't been, where students and we've had educators in the past also perform.
Okay.
And it, all sorts of different things, from comedy to music to voice to
Oh, they've
piano.
had fashion shows. It
It's-
really is.
Is that a junior class fundraiser?
It's the senior class fundraiser.
Okay, okay,
They've been
okay.
doing this since freshman year, and it really is. It's one of those things that after the fact, people always say, "Oh, I wish I had known I would have been there."
Yeah.
It's a great time. Thank you for remembering
And
that.
appropriate for younger kids too. You know, I think Graham has been going since he was maybe 7 or 8.
Yep.
So
Okay. All right, great. Anybody else have anything they wanted to add? If not, we're going to go into executive session. So by roll call vote in accordance with the Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, for the purpose of conducting strategy session for negotiations with the Abington Education Association, Units A and B, and non-union personnel, since declared by the chair to hold this discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee, and we will not return to this regular session. I'll be looking for a roll call vote to go, and I'll say yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
yes.
Great. Thank you very much, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you.